Stopping school shootings. How do we do that? That's kind of a ticking time bomb of a question. Playing with that might get you hurt. However, this is the Alpha Male Podcast, and I would submit that part of being an alpha male is tackling the hard things, always doing what is easy. That's not alpha male at all. Alpha male is tackling what's hard, facing the hard things. We're going to talk about today stopping school shootings. Welcome to Alpha Male Podcast, the podcast where we talk about what it means to be a man the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values. That's very much going to play into the topic today. I'm going to plug in the bio because I think it is germane to today's topic. And then we'll take a, hopefully, truthful, loving approach with boldness of speech on tackling this sadly very relevant topic of school shootings. So, who am I? Who is this person talking to you from across the internet? Why should you listen? First and foremost, I am a Christian, a servant of God, and a follower of Jesus Christ. God has blessed me to do many things in my life where I could do nothing apart from Him. U.S. Marine Corps combat veteran, did a couple of tours in Iraq. As an assaultman after my combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. Also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Also did several years in law enforcement, LAPD. I worked regular assignments and more specialized assignments. Been a private contractor for a 3-letter government agency. That's all I'll say about that. Been blessed to be a state rifle and pistol champion and West Coast regional rifle champion. Won more shooting competitions with the talent that God's given me than I can actually remember. Was blessed to be the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. Our primary job, the reason we primarily existed, was to stop active shooters. I got the opportunity to head up and be the commander of that team. I grew up around guns, hunting and shooting and competing at a very early age. Been blessed to hunt all over this beautiful country, from whitetail on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast, and bear and elk and all manner of things. I've even been a professional big game hunter and guide. But again, most importantly, I'm a Christian. And I am your host, Michael Milito. Welcome to the podcast. So, without more delay, let's get into stopping school shootings. You might think I'm going to start with guns. I do a whole other podcast called Gunfighter Life. But I'm not. I'm not going to start there. Just like the other side tends to view guns as something more than they are. They tend to view them as evil in and of themselves. Guns are the problem. Guns are evil. Guns kill people. They don't. Guns are a tool. Let's not let ourselves be delusional and fall into that same trap of guns. Just having more guns. That's going to fix everything. It's not going to fix everything. I said this is going to be a hard topic. I think a lot of times we want an easy solution. People on one side say, ban guns, that'll fix it, but it won't. And people on the other side say, let's everybody buy an AR-15, that'll fix it, but it won't. Because the problem is bigger than that. And I'm speaking mostly to Americans. I know people listen from all over the world, and I'm very humbled by that. But I'm speaking to the culture and time that I know. America, and its ideals and its founding, goes back a long way. We might think 1776. It goes back farther. Now, I do believe, and there is supporting evidence, that the Vikings landed here hundreds of years before this. However, really for what we're talking about today, 1617, if I remember correctly, Jamestown, before that Roanoke, but Jamestown was the first permanent colony, I believe. And after that, the Pilgrims up in New England. They came here and they founded a Christian nation on Judeo-Christian values. You can argue with that all you want, but look at our laws. They are based on God's laws. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. They are founded directly out of that. And it was a good foundation. It was a good foundation for a nation. Not perfect, I'll concede that, but very, very good. It was a shining light in the world for freedom. Look at our culture and society today. Do you think it's more godly? Closer to the ideals that God laid down as on how man should live? Because let's not forget that God decides how man should live. Do we listen to him more now or less than we did in 1650, 1720, 1775? Are we closer to that ideal, to that example in 2023? Or in the 1990s when the first kind of big school shooting, I know there was the Bell Tower shooter in Texas, but that guy had a brain tumor or something. Let's throw that one out. When they first really started in the 1990s, were we closer to how God tells us to live in the 1990s than we were in 1650? That's a big issue, right? Like I said, it's not as easy as buying something or a tool. It goes deeper than that. Do you honestly think we are closer following God the way He tells us to live on this earth now than we were then? We have all these things and we call it progress. I can get on Amazon and click something and have it in 2 days. Ooh. I can decide tonight I want Chinese or Thai or pizza and have it delivered right to my door. Ooh. And those things aren't malum and say they're not evil by nature, but we've missed the forest for the trees. Is that progress? I would consider progress living right before God, walking with God. Are we closer or farther away from that when we were at our founding? I don't think you can argue that we're further away. And we drifted far away. I kind of, at least in my mind, is this bell curve where we started drifting and drifting and drifting, and then once we stopped teaching the Bible in school and let generations fall away, started coveting money over doing what's right and wrong, started coveting fame and fortune over doing what's right, kind of see that curve exponentially go up. I would submit starting in maybe the 60s. It was going up before that, but it really started going up sharply. We see this drifting away from the ideals, the way that God tells us to live. And keep in mind, He doesn't tell us those things because He needs us to do them. He's the same God. He's just as powerful either way. He lays that down for our good. He tells us how to live because it's good for us. It is written, it was given for our good. And we thumb our nose up at it. We say, nah, that's old and outdated. And we look for easy solutions. Why? I'd submit because we're lazy. We want an easy solution. We want to blame somebody else. That's not being an alpha male, and that's part of the problem. Blaming somebody else. People on the right side of the train arguing with the people on the left side of the train when the whole train is heading off a cliff, going the way it shouldn't go. It's easy to say, oh, it's because people voted wrong. People would just vote a certain way, as if voting once every 4 years is going to fix all these problems. It's not going to fix these problems. I put it this way. I put my faith in God. No politician is my savior. My savior is Jesus Christ. I'm not saying one politician is not better than another. I'm not telling you not to vote. But if you think that's the core thing that's going to fix this, I'd submit whoever was in office, these school shootings will continue because they've continued pretty commonly throughout since the 90s, since Columbine. No matter who is in office. You think just more of that is going to change it. You're looking for an easy way. You want to just shuck responsibility and just brush your shoulders off. Well, I voted the right way. It's all the other people, That's the problem. Shucking responsibility. Somehow that's going to fix the problem. The problem is we've, as a culture, as a people, as a society, as a nation, turned our back on God. And we pervert it by doing it in the name of love. Oh, it's loving. We're more loving now. We're more tolerant than we were. No, you're not. I don't fully understand love because I don't fully understand God. How could I? God is love. When I was a child, I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. Let me ask you this. Is it loving to give somebody what they want all the time? To make them feel good all the time? Is that love? If I have a really good friend who I grew up with, who I love, and I see him and he's now a raging heroin addict, I say, I really love, Sam. Sam really likes heroin. For his birthday, I'm going to save up and get him a kilo of heroin because he really, really enjoys it. It makes him feel good. I'm a really good friend. I love Sam. I'm going to give him a kilo of heroin for his birthday. Right? That's not love. That's insane. A more common, realistic example would be you have a child. Child comes into a whole bunch of candy. Your child wants to eat candy every day for weeks because he has enough of it and that's what he wants to eat, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Is it loving? Say, oh, my kid really wants to do this. It makes him feel good. It makes him happy. I'm going to be a loving parent and let him just eat whatever he wants all the time. No, that's ridiculous. It's not loving to give somebody what they want all the time when it's not good for them. We've let ourselves be deceived that, love is just giving somebody whatever they want all the time and letting them do whatever they want. And if you at all rebuke somebody, that's not loving. That's judgmental. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is rebuke somebody. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is rebuke someone. Jesus certainly rebuked people. Is he not our example? You might go to Sam and say, Sam, you have a problem. You need to fix yourself. This is not good. It's not right. And you need to stop. This path that you're on leads nowhere good. It's wrong. It's bad. Or, hey, little Sammy, I know you just want to eat candy, but no. You're going to have a proper dinner. Then maybe I'll give you a piece of candy. That's more loving. It's not about making people feel good. That's ridiculous. There's all kinds of things that you can do that are horrible for you that make you feel good. That's not loving. So when I became a man, when I was young and foolish and brash, I thought that pleasure was like the thing in life to pursue. Pleasure doesn't equal happiness. Pleasure often leads to misery. We see that today. Oh, pleasure. I love this other person more than my spouse, and it makes me feel good. It gives me pleasure. But it destroys lives. It destroys families. And we're called not to do that. And we've, not just in that example, in many ways, turned our back on what's good and just, the nuclear family. The father and the mother raising kids, educating kids. We've turned away from telling people that they're messing up, that they're doing the wrong thing because we think that's loving. Oh, it's loving. You can just love whoever you want. No, God says what is right and wrong and what love is. He defines what love is, not you. And we've twisted that and perverted that and said, you can't tell me what love is. If I think it's loving, then it's loving. But that's not true. You don't get to decide how to express love, whether that's right or wrong. I don't do this. But if I said, you know how I express love? I like to smack people in the face. And every time I saw my wife, hey honey, I'm home. Here's a backhand. I missed you a ton. That's how I show love. You would say, that's wrong. That's not how you show love. And I would agree. And there are many examples of that's not actually loving. That's not how you express love in a relationship. And God tells us what's a proper loving relationship and what is not. A man shall not lie with a man as he lies with a woman. I don't care how it makes you feel. You can't just give your body the things that make you feel good all the time. That's watching Netflix and eating Doritos all the time, right? Where does that lead? That pleasure doesn't lead to happiness, to obesity and a heart attack. Sleeping with whoever you want, whoever that might be, as much as you want. That's not good. Leads to STDs and sad, lonely, desolate existence. God knows that. He's the one that designed us. How about we listen to Him instead of doing what we want all the time and seeking pleasure all the time? Going back to we stopped teaching the Bible in school. We stopped teaching creation in school, that God created us. I often start the podcast with that. We are made in the image of God. And I think we've largely forgotten that or thumbed our nose at that in society. We stopped teaching that to our kids. Oh, you're just a bunch of space junk that coalesced together and then somehow that nobody can explain in the garbage science that they teach. You got life, and you were once a bacteria, and over generations and generations, now you're a person. Gelatinous blab that somehow came to have consciousness and self-awareness. There's no value there. There's no specialness there. I wonder, you don't want another person inside of you, just rip it out. It's just a bunch of pond goo. Other people make you mad, well, just shoot them. They're just piles of random space junk. But it's a lie. And that's the garbage that kids are being taught. You are made in the image of God. You are special. God created you, and He doesn't make junk. You didn't get to decide to be created, and you don't get to decide to end that for you or anybody else. That is wrong. It is malum and say you are made in the image of God. How many issues in society, not just this one of school shootings, would be fixed if we rectified that, if we got a right view of God and of ourselves? You are made in the image of God. You are not just a bunch of cosmic space crap put together, somehow got consciousness. You are made in the image of God, and the one who made you and designed you tells you what's right and wrong. And one day, you'll face Him. Imagine that. Not that hard to imagine because we were a lot closer to it, again, at our founding. I liken it to this. You ever play Jenga? It might seem like a weird thing to bring up, but stay with me here. Jenga, the game, it's a fun game. Now, to be fair, when you start out with Jenga and you look at it, it's not perfect. There's a bunch of cracks. It's a bunch of pieces that aren't mortared together, aren't super glued together. You could make Jenga stronger super gluing it together. But it's a pretty good starting point, right? It's got some cracks, but it's a good starting point. That thing, it holds together pretty well. In the game of Jenga, you start taking pieces out. I would submit that's what we've done in our culture in America and in Western society today. Take a little bit of God out of school here. Take a little bit of Imago Dei, made in His image, over here. Instead of valuing truth and what's right, let's value the dollar. Take another piece out over here. Let's tell women it's more honorable. Women should have choices in life and do whatever they want, but we're going to tell them it's more honorable to work a 9-to-5 job and punch a time clock than it is to raise a good, strong man or woman made in the image of God. Take another piece out here. We're going to stop telling people that this is the way God says to love Him and to love His neighbor. And we're going to say love can be whatever you want it to be. You can love whoever you want. You can marry whoever you want. Take another piece out here. We're going to stop teaching our kids and have the government train our kids. Just take a couple of pieces out. And the thing is still standing. But you take a look back. You take a step back. You take a breath in this game. You take a step back and you look at this Jenga. And you say, wow. It's pretty wobbly. It's not looking too hot. It's still standing. But it's not really a firm foundation anymore. It's not really holding up too well. And I would submit that is us today. That is us today. That wobbly, never know when it's going to fall over Jenga of America. Now, unlike the game of Jenga, we can choose to put pieces back in. You can build it stronger by going back to the original design. We were founded as a Judeo-Christian nation on Judeo-Christian values and laws. You can't just love whoever you want whenever you want. This is what God has said is loving. This is what bears fruit. This is what produces human life, which is made in the image of God. This and this alone. That is perverted. It is not loving. You could say, you are a man, you are a woman. Some things in life you don't get to pick, no matter what you want. It's unloving for me to lie to you and tell you can change that. Put another piece back. Instead of teaching your evolved pond scum or a bunch of random space junk, you could teach you are made in the image of God. Your life has value. Put another piece back. Not only were you made in the image of God, and different than everything else in creation, but you were made for a purpose. Imagine what a different Jenga game we'd have right now if we had put those pieces back decades ago or never let them be removed in the first place. And I think oftentimes we look for solutions in the macro. Well, I'll just vote and we'll get another person in office. Is that really how we should look at it? Or we should look at it with ourselves first. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. That denotes that you love yourself, right? You can't give what you don't have. Start it with you. Personal responsibility. Are you honoring God in your life? Are you living out that God made you and made you for a purpose? Are you walking that purpose out? Are you in your own life saying, this is not what God says is good. I should not be doing this. Let me stop doing this. This is bad. How do I know it's bad? Because God says so. We can do that in our own lives individually. Instead of looking for a top-down solution. Change. Turn back to God and what He says is right and wrong. And then you can help do it for others. Don't be a hypocrite. Be like what Jesus says, pointing out the speck in your brother's eye when you have a plank in your own eye. People will often use that to say, don't judge me. But Jesus doesn't stop there. He says, first, take the plank out of your own eye, then you'll see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. So yes, you are supposed to fix each other, but fix yourself first. Kind of the point of that parable. See clearly first. Clarify your own life, truth, and justice, and what God says is right and wrong. Turn back. Repent. Fix your own Jenga puzzle. Build yourself up. Go back to right and wrong and being made in the image of God and believing it and walking it out. Then you'll see clearly to help your brother and love your neighbor as yourself. And what is love? Well, God very clearly says what love is and what love is not, and what is perverse and not love. When did school shootings become like a common thing? I would submit in the 90s. We had guns way before that. I was on a rifle team in school. We walked down the halls with weapons. There's no school shootings. We also got in fights all the time and beat each other up a lot. A lot of us had guns in our cars. I grew up pretty poor. I didn't have a car in high school, but a lot of people and people that I hung out with, they would have guns. I certainly had guns and went shooting and had access to guns, as did many of us growing up poor in the South. It was just a way to put food on the table. A gun is not the problem nor the solution. You may have thought that. So what can we do to stop school shootings? We can turn back to God as an individual and then help our neighbors do it and then our country. That's the issue. That's a big problem. And these school shootings are but a small glance into that much bigger problem of falling away from God and our culture and our society and our nation. Just one piece of that block. We look at recently, at the time of this recording, there was a school shooting where 6, 7, if you count the shooter, died. Do you know how many babies are ripped out of their mother's body every day in this country? It's a genocide. Is school shooting a problem? Yes, that's a much bigger problem. Mass shootings besides school, just mass shootings. Are they a problem? Yeah, they're a problem. How many people die every year due to mass shootings versus how many people commit suicide every day? There's a solution to all that. Turn back to God. Realize that He made you in His image. You don't get to decide when you're created and made. You don't get to decide when you can end it for yourself or anybody else rightfully and justly. These are all just pieces of a broken puzzle that are out of place. So if you wanted a cheap, easy, make you feel good episode, this probably wasn't it. Some of the most popular episodes done here on Alpha Miller, like best gear list of 2022 or whatever, and those are fun and there's nothing wrong with those, but it's sad that those are some of the most popular ones, when that's far less important than things like this in your own life, in your neighbor's life. Again, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is rebuke someone. And sometimes the most loving thing that can be done for you is to get rebuked, as much as we might not like it. From the book of Proverbs, number 27. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. Wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. Yeah, take the plank out of your own eye and help your brother with the speck in his eye, so we can all see clearly. I once was blind, but now I see. If we all can see clearly, we can help each other get back. Again, we won't be perfect. Even the Jenga game to start with wasn't perfect, but we can get a lot closer. We can do a lot better. Come on. You're telling me that we can't do better as individuals, as friends, as a community, as a nation than we're doing right now? Anyway, I'm doing a series. I was planning on coming out tomorrow, but I think I'm going to put this one out tomorrow. Do those after this because it makes more sense now that I've done this episode. But I'm doing a series called Average Joes, or This and That for Newbies, and talking about loving your neighbor as yourself denotes that you love yourself. Hopefully growing better. You're made in the image of God. Your body is a gift from God. Things like Average Joe's fitness, Average Joe's preparedness. It's not as simple as get a gun, but I think that having a gun and knowing how to use it is a useful thing in society and culture. Going back to that foundation of the original Jenga game, we have the Second Amendment. You might say that piece is kind of half out right now. They'll have their hand on it trying to take it completely out, but we still have some of it. And Jesus tells his disciples to have swords. So as they say, put that in your pipe and smoke it. He tells them to have swords. Swords are a weapon. So, yeah, I think you should have a gun. Instead of episode that I put out yesterday, again, mass shooting solutions. And the solution is you. Men should be standing ready armed. Not waiting for the police to get there. Not whatever. You. Is there a reason why you can't be armed right now? On that note, there's another episode recorded by God's grace, will be out the day after this one comes out, on active shooter kit, combat handguns, war belts, body armor, rifles, ammo, shotgun, emergency medical. That's going to be on Gunfighter Life. I wanted this to come out first because I think this is more important. If you're a warrior, if you're a gunfighter, check out Gunfighter Life. If you're not already subscribed to that, subscribe to this one and that one. That way you'll get that episode when it comes out. Gunfighter Life, active shooter kit. And should be out the day after this one comes out. So scroll down, hopefully hit some stars, leave a good star rating if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, and then go over to Gunfighter Life. You'll be able to do it while you're listening to this, and then follow that show, subscribe, whatever the thing says. That way you can get it when it comes out. Is there a reason why you can't be armed, or is it an excuse? So I'll do one on Average Joe's concealed carry, like being armed and effective. And if it bears fruit, because that's a good litmus test for whether something's good or not, if it's bearing fruit. I'll do one escalating up the magnitude of force, right? But we can start there. I'll start out with that, this kind of mini-series. So if you want to make sure you get those, make sure you're subscribed. Also, blessings are meant to be shared, right? They're not meant to be hoarded. So if this episode kind of tugged at you, feel free to share it with somebody you think should hear it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Share it. It doesn't cost anything to share it. Anyway, with that, hopefully, although not an easy podcast to do or probably to listen to, hopefully it was beneficial. Hopefully it struck a chord. Let us all turn back to God in ourselves and as a nation. With that, I'm going to roll into the tactical tip of the day and then the tactical verse of the day. Tactical tip of the day. As you probably heard in the bio, I was the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters, to stop mass shooters, and to train the men on the team to do so. Part of my job, coming up with training, doing training. Skills that come in a lot in actual shootings, like making yourself feel good at the range or mag dumping in a berm, but actual good useful skills. Once you have the fundamentals, a good grasp of them, shooting on the move, shooting while moving, and shooting and moving. Shooting and moving, like shooting 2 rounds, sprinting to another spot, and shooting 2 rounds on a target. Shooting while moving, meaning like shooting rounds on target while you are actually moving forward, back, left, right, in all manner of angles. Tactical tip. Don't even need a shooting range for this one. You want to get a little bit better at shooting on the move. I think I got this from Matt Burkett, a guy that was big into competition shooting a long time ago. Fill a simple water bottle, half full, and carry it and hold it like you would hold a gun and walk around, forward, back, left, right, different angles. Try and keep that water as smooth and level as possible as you're moving. Maintaining a good into the gun stance, leaning forward to, kind of counteract recoil and keep momentum going. But you can do that with a water bottle. You can get fairly decent at shooting on the move, a lot better than you would be if you didn't practice. That translates to your sights moving up and down, left and right. If you can keep that water steadier in that bottle, you can keep your gun steadier when you're moving. That's your tactical tip of the day, your tactical verse of the day, and so many. But I'm going to pick one I think that was core to today's topic. You'll find this in Genesis chapter 1. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Let's never forget how special that is, that of all creation, we are made in the image of God. With that, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.